In this video, we're going to do some exercises here where we are practicing placing in-text citations in the correct location with the correct information in sentences. And again, you're not expected to know all of this information off the top of your head, so remember you should have your resource that you refer to when you are looking for answers, whether that's the APA Manual of Style or a different book, or for example, the PowerPoint that I provide as a quick cheat sheet. I have provided that in a link in the description for the video as well. And so remember that if you want to do this first, it's best to practice it on your own, try to find your own answers, and then compare it to the answers we go over in this video. So the actual worksheet is available in the description for the video here. All right, so when you're ready to check your answers, this is what we're going to do, go through the sentences 1 through 10 here. So the first one, I'm usually not even going to read the sentence because really it doesn't matter what's in the sentence unless you're looking for the author's name. So I'm not even going to read this. I can see that it's just writing that somebody is writing, right? And I'm looking at the in-text citation at the end. And there is a problem with this in-text citation, and so I'm going to fix it, right? So it's very close. However, the period is in the wrong spot. So instead of coming before the parenthetical citation, we're going to delete it and move it to the end, and that is where it should go for APA style, that you have the parenthetical citation with the author and the year and potentially the page number if needed at the end of the sentence, however, before the period that ends the sentence. Moving on to number 2, again, not going to look at the writing. Whoever is writing this essay has written these sentences, great. We can see that this is the sentence where they want to start giving credit to these authors. And so they have the authors and the year, which is a good start, but there is something wrong with this in-text citation. And the problem here is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 authors. And remember the rule that if there are 3 to 5 authors, you write them out the first time. But if there's 6 or more, in this case we have 7, you immediately shorten it to just the first author's last name, which in this case is Johnson. But to indicate that it's not just Johnson, there are others, we just cut them out. We put et al, et space al period, to indicate that there are more authors, but there are more than we should list here. So again, if there's 6 or more authors, shorten it to the first author's last name and et al. And then we have number 3 here. Looking again, not going to read through the sentences that these people are writing, just looking at the information for the in-text citation here. And this one is a tricky one. So we've got Choi, comma, 2002, and Friedrichs and Sullivan, comma, 2001. And a lot of people get stuck here, like, what is going on? But I'll let you know, what's happening is this person is taking information from 2 sources and putting this sentence together. And in this situation, what they're trying to say is both the source from Choi and the source from Friedrichs and Sullivan's say this information. And so they want to say you can find this information in both Choi and Friedrich and Sullivan's articles. And it's more common that you'll do this upper level undergrad or graduate school. It's not very common for entry level undergraduate students to be doing it, but it is something to be aware of. If you see it in papers, if you see it in articles, this is what's going on. And to fix it, we're going to get rid of the comma between the 2 sources and change it to a semicolon. And so we have first source, semicolon, second source. And the other thing I want to check, but it is actually correct here, is that they are listed alphabetically then. So it doesn't matter what year each of them were published in. We're checking the authors' names and saying, okay, which source goes first? And we list them alphabetically. So C comes before F, so they are in the correct order. And we have number 4 here. And this one causes stumbling for a lot of people as well, because it looks pretty good. You've got a signal phrase, cross stated, and immediately following the author cross, you have the year it was published, 1980, and there's a page number at the end following the quote. So what's the problem here? And the problem here is that this is set up like MLA at the end, where it has just the number in parentheses, and it needs to be APA formatting. And whenever you have a page number, I'm going to assume it's a page number, but if you write it, you would know, right, if it's a page or paragraph number. And you would say, yep, we need to add page 13 here. So P for page. Otherwise, everything else is correct. You've got the author's name. It's immediately followed by the year in parentheses. And we're separating the page number to follow the quoted material at the end. All right, moving on to number 5. Non-traditional students are the fastest growing population, etc., etc. And at the end, we have Fairchild, 2003, page 11, which is actually a perfect in-text citation. The parentheses, everything is correct. It has the right information in the right order. It's at the end where you would think it's supposed to go, right? But there are a few contingencies, and one of them is that if you have a quote that ends before the end of the sentence, which again is pretty rare for people to do, but can happen, then you need to put the in-text citation after the closing quotation mark rather than at the end of the sentence. So I'm just going to copy this because the information is correct. I'm going to cut it from where it's at and paste it in to where it needs to go. And that is immediately following this closing quotation mark for the end of the quote. And I know it looks weird, and this is probably one of the reasons why it's not very common for people to do this. It's weird, it's hanging out in the middle of the sentence, but because we're ending a quote before the end of the sentence, and this is the student writer's wording that they put in versus being part of the quote, we would move the in-text citation to follow the closing quotation mark. Moving on to number 6, we have Rodriguez and Kahn, defined blah, 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 blah. So this is a signal phrase. We're identifying the authors and giving them a verb to introduce the quote. And then we also have them at the end. So we have, again, Rodriguez and Kahn, 2006, page 18. And this in-text citation is actually perfect. It has the right information in the right order, so it has authors, comma, year, comma, and the page number, and it's following the quote. However, the problem is we now have the authors listed twice in the sentence, and APA hates unnecessary repetition. So there's actually a couple ways you could fix this. You could get rid of the author's name in the sentence, and you could just say the researchers define descriptive research, blah, blah, blah. Or what I would probably prefer is to leave the signal phrase there that identifies the authors and instead move the year of publication into parentheses immediately following the authors. And then we just delete that copy duplicate information from the in-text citation at the end. So again, we're splitting the citation. Authors are part of the grammar of the sentence, so they need to be out of the parenthesis on their own. 2006 is not part of the sentence, so that's why it's in parentheses. And the page number in parentheses at the end, again, not part of the grammatical structure of the sentence. And then we do have number 7 here. And this one people will look at and pretty quickly say, Okay, we are missing a comma between the author and the year, which is a problem, yes. And that would fix it if it is the only time that this source is used in the paper. So if the source is only used one time, you can just leave it like this. However, if the source is used again in the paper, like it is, for example, here, then we actually do one more thing. And that is that we take the group name, National Center for Education Statistics, and if it's possible to shorten it with an acronym, we do that. So in this case, the organization does have an abbreviated name, which is NCES, the first letter of each word except for the preposition. And we would put that in box brackets, so not the regular parentheses, but the square box ones, to say this is the author's name, which is a group this time, and we are in the future going to abbreviate it to NCES. So then in number 8 here, we need to get rid of the actual full name because we again gave the abbreviation. We're going to start using the abbreviation for the rest of the paper, and we change it to NCES. And the year is provided there, so it is good then. We just needed to change it from the full group title to the acronym. And then we have number 9, which again can be a bit of a stumbling spot for people because they'll look at it and say, okay, the in-text citation, everything's in the parentheses at the end, so that's good. Has the authors and it has the year, so that's good. Has a comma separating the authors and the year. So what is the problem here? And the answer is that we cannot have and written out in the parentheses. So you would get rid of the word and instead use the ampersand or and sign in between the parentheses. And that's a small thing, but it is an APA requirement. And then lastly, we have an example according to Jacobson, the company will blah, 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 and then we have Benson and D at the end. And this is confusing, so we potentially have two authors here, or we have an author and Benson, North Dakota, which I think is a city in North Dakota. So not sure what's going on. The formatting is not clear, so it would be confusing to readers. And so as the writer of this sentence, you would know what you're trying to do. And in this case, you have the author that's mentioned in a source, which is Jacob, and the actual source that it's coming from, which is written by Benson. And so what you need to do is add as cited in to say this guy, Jacobson, he's not going to show up on my reference entry list because I'm not using his source. I haven't read his source. I'm just using Benson's source, but in her article, she has used him for information or quote. And so we're saying that this information from Jacobson is actually from Benson's article. And that's what's going on here, is that you have that indirect citation, that you want to give credit to the person that the information is coming from, but you have to tell your reader what source it's coming from, because we want to know, where can I go and read this source? Well, that's Benson. And if Benson does not have a date, which is I think what's happening here, we would need to lowercase it and say N period D period to correct it. And then the citation is correct and makes sense. And you leave Jacobson in there, he's the originator of the information, but we are citing our source, which is from Benson, and using the author and the year, or in this case, no date because there was no year of publication provided. All right, so if you want to go through, check how you did. Again, as you're learning this, you're probably not going to be perfect because there's hundreds of APA rules, and even looking them up, you'll miss stuff. So the goal here is not to be perfect while you're learning, but to learn the rules and how to apply them so that you can write papers as close to perfect as you can with APA.